VE Day, of course. Do you have any memories, relatives, dads, granddads who fought in the war? Any stories? By all means, give me a call. What you think today means. And whether or not we'll ever see anything like that again. Let me know what you think. 03444991000. So lots still to come in the next 60 minutes. And by the way, at 9 o'clock, Kinsey Schofield will join me to discuss a woeful weekend for Prince Harry, who, I think he may well have psychiatric issues, to say the least. But he's in disgrace. He disgraced himself on Friday. He shamed himself. Outrageous. I don't know how long my father's got to live. How dare you? How dare you? Kicking around your father's battle against cancer as some kind of media ploy. And the nonsense he came up with. Absolute nonsense. Paranoid claptrap. Absolute fantastical garbage. It really was. Watch the whole interview. It's kind of sad. This guy's got problems, big problems. So Kinsey will be on later, but by all means, give me a ring. Tell me what you think. 03444991000. Before we get to any of that, though, let's talk about this very special day, the beginning of 4 days of celebration to mark the 80th anniversary of Britain's victory after the Second World War. Arguably the worst conflict the world has ever known. Britain's triumph. Let's talk to former military intelligence officer, MBE, I do believe, Philip Ingram. Is it MBE or OBE, Philip?
MBE. My beeping efforts is how you abbreviate it, as opposed to OBE, which is others' beeping efforts.
No, OBE for people like me is when you go for lunch with a fellow journalist and you have an OBE lunch, 1 bottle each, which for me is actually quite mild. I never stop at 1. Philip, let's talk about today. Well, first of all, we saw the flyover, we saw the royal family, we saw the vast crowds descending on London to mark this very special day, 80th anniversary of, I would argue, the greatest victory in British military history, in Britain's history. It is still uplifting to see how this nation, I think in many ways this nation is lost. It has lost its sense of being, its sense of meaning. But today, we gathered around the greatness of this nation, and there was something quite special about it, I thought.
Something very special about it. And I keep hearing we've lost our way with regard to things, but then every time there's a big ceremony, we put a spectacular show on that gets tens of thousands of people out and is watched across the world. So we still have our influence. And I think today, commemorating as much as celebrating what happened and those that lost their lives on all sides, bringing together not just the military but the emergency services, the youth organisations, and then we had those that are fighting a current war, the Ukrainians who have been trained in the UK, coming at the very back of it. And that shows how relevant it is, remembering what happened and hoping that we never have to go through those horrors again.
Also, I think a very big day for the royal family. I mean, a lot of people say, we all get very entertained by the royal family, and they're our kind of real-life soap opera, Harry, Meghan, etc. And we're interested in the royal family. People can't read enough about them. They can't see enough about them. But a lot of people, a lot of critics say, well, do they really have much relevance in modern Britain, in the modern world? Well, I think today we saw probably their most important role, their most important function, that they are the sort of centrepiece of national emotion at times like this. The nation revolves around them. And I think it's very important that they really come out in all their pomp and glory on a day like this, stand on the balcony and essentially say to the nation, we're all in this together, and we always were. It does remind us that the royal family are very important to this country.
Oh, they're critical. And you have to remember that the King and his mother, the Queen beforehand, was the head of the armed forces. They command the armed forces. You swear your allegiance to the monarch first and foremost. So you don't swear your allegiance, you're first and foremost to whatever elected government that's in there. You promise to follow their direction, but the monarch is your boss. And we've got a constitutional monarchy that embarrasses other political leaders or heads of state around the world. What did we see of Francois Macron today? And how much does it cost the French people for him to parade himself around? We saw nothing of the German president today. We've seen nothing of Donald Trump. We've got a very, very special head of state who stays apolitical and provides that conscience for our prime ministers, whatever political persuasion they're from, and a bit of stability over a period of time. Her Majesty showed that in spades. I think the King is stepping up, and you've been able to do that and whilst going through his own personal battles with his health.
Absolutely, yeah. Well worth pointing that out, that the man continues to work his backside off. And he wouldn't have missed this for the world, but he's a sick man. He's fighting cancer, so respect to His Majesty. Now, some of the older people today who were milling around London, I was down there, millions of people down there, it seemed to me. I wonder, amid their celebrations of our glorious past, amid them honouring the heroes who fought and died for our freedom, whether or not there's a touch of sadness in their souls. Are they grieving for a Britain we've lost? Would Britain be the same if we went to war again in similar circumstances? I'm talking about a generation, where kids of 12 years old pretended they were old enough to be in the army, where everybody signed up, where families, wives, children made the most incredible sacrifices, realising that this was the nation's darkest hour and they had to be a part of the war effort. If they didn't rally behind the government and our war against Germany, we could lose it. There was this sort of national awareness that it was time to step up to the plate. And we saw some of the veterans today, some of the still surviving veterans, remarkable old men and women, telling their stories. And I'm just wondering, I look at today's Britain, where the younger generation, their idea of bravery is saying something controversial in the Big Brother diary room. Do you think we've lost Britain past that glorious nation we used to be?
Well, I think the good thing is that the young today don't have to experience, and I hope they never have to experience, what those that came up to the Second World War had to experience. I think if the same circumstances were there, where we were going to total war, people have no choice but to be called up and to either serve from a civil perspective or to serve in the military and prepare for things. Yes, life was much harder then. It's much easier now, but that's because of the sacrifice that's been put there. The one comparison I would put is if you look at what's happened to Ukraine. And Ukraine, the young will be of a similar generation with similar likes and wants and things to the generation that we have in the UK. And when it came to stepping up, and when it continues to come to stepping up, to volunteering to fight for the survival of their country, they're doing it at the moment. So I do think if there were similar circumstances, that it's not all gloom and doom, that nostalgia makes us think. But from a nostalgic perspective, it wasn't pleasant. It's the last thing we ever want anyone to have to go through again. So it's good that youngsters have that freedom to express themselves in the ways they want to at the moment. But that freedom has come on the back of all the sacrifices that were made by those that didn't come back.
Yes, indeed. And I mean, they called that generation, our Second World War generation, if you like, the greatest generation. I mean, I think to an extent that's because they were called up to the plate. They said they had to step up to the plate, and they did. But they did so in tremendous style and courage. Do you think they were the greatest generation? Do you think we'll ever see anything like that generation again?
I think they had a focus. They had a single purpose, and the single purpose was the survival of the country and the survival of the way of life that we know it. And therefore, that in itself gives people this sense of direction. I don't think we've had to have that single purpose again, but there have been lots of conflicts since the Second World War, which could have turned into something very nasty indeed. And the people have come together. It's just their little bitty conflicts, and people have stepped up to the mark and joined the services, whether it be providing a capability to deter the Russians in the Cold War, whether it be fighting in the Korean War, whether it be the Falklands War, whether it be in the Balkans, where people can now go on holiday to, because we've solved that problem out. I'll not talk about Iraq and Afghanistan because they were complete debacles and failures, but people stepped up to the mark to try and do what the government was saying needed to be done. And we have to start to remember them as well, because they have suffered horrors that no one should ever see, so that those horrors don't come back to the generation that want to play on social media or read the Big Brother diary room or whatever else that they want to do, and they don't have to suffer those horrors themselves.
As a military man, and speaking for your military colleagues, I mean, it must be frustrating to an extent. I mean, we all understand how the world goes, but we do have modern Britain is not a nation full of people who even respect our military anymore. Yeah. You know, you hear more and more people say, I wouldn't let my kids go to war, and kids say, I'm not going to war for this country and all that. I mean, that must be tremendously sad for those of you in our military circles.
It's very sad. You know, I've walked down the street with my medals on, and people have said thank you for your service. I've also walked down the same street with medals on. People have spat at me and called me a murderer. You know, that's what the country is. Both have got the freedom to do that. They've got the freedom to do that because my colleagues and I, and those that went before us, and those that are going today and will go in the future, have ensured that we have the peace for people to have those freedoms of expression. And, you know, in a way, we feel proud of being able to bring those freedoms of expression into the country. It's sad when people abuse those freedoms to try and abuse other people, because we should have no abuse in society. And actually, I think every military person is probably the biggest the biggest pacifists that there are out there. The difference is, instead of protesting and waving flags for peace, the military will go out and fight for peace.
Now, after the Vietnam War, America did suffer some similar problems, if you like, that veterans came back from the Vietnam War to find a country that didn't exactly thank them or embrace them. But generally speaking, Americans and America just automatically respects its military. Yep. Every time, I mean, I lived there for 10 years, every time they meet someone who's in the army or was in the army, they automatically they say, thank you for your service. Yep. Why don't we do that in this country?
Because we don't get the leadership from the top. You know, in America, you know, it's from the top down. You know, if you've served, you get free medical care for life. You get programs to go into further education, so that whenever you come out, you can go back, retrain into a new role. You don't have to pay for it. You don't have to pay your education fees, and you can then go back and add your experience back into society again. And that starts with the wider government policy and the way America looks after things, and it goes through all of the American corporate policies. So you go to, you know, Disney World, or is it Disneyland in America, and you're a veteran, and you'll get special passes to go through and cheaper deals and everything else, and that happens across the board. Whereas in this country, once you have finished your service and handed your identity card in, you're forgotten. The military don't care. The government doesn't care. They keep coming out with little programs, and today the Veterans Minister launched a program called Valor. I've looked at it in detail and can't work out what it is. It's a soundbite for the government on the back of the publicity that's going around today, and that's really sad. But the Minister of Defence, it's Minister of Defence's veterans policy that veterans are responsible. The responsibility for veterans goes to three organisations: local authorities, the NHS and the third sector, i.e. charities. That means the government has washed its hands of them, and that's where the problem lies.
And that's a scandal, Philip. That really is.
Complete scandal.
Philip, fantastic to talk to you, and thank you for your service. Philip Ingram there, former military intelligence officer on VE Day. Let me know what you think about VE Day. Have we lost the Britain that was, the Britain of the past, the historical Britain? I can't help feeling, I mean, you can't get too lost in sentimentality. Oh, we used to be so different and all that kind of stuff. But I just feel that the Britain that won the Second World War, that fought so hard and sort of propelled itself to a fantastic triumph, a fantastic victory for our own freedom. I can't help feeling that if the same set of circumstances happened again, and let's face it, it's looking fairly likely, whether or not we'll respond in the same inspirational way